So now, as someone that is probably the greatest comic book writer that the medium has ever seen, knowing that early on in your career you were hoping to write the great American novel, as someone that's written, what do you enjoy about the comic book medium that's different than writing novels?
Money.
At least it wasn't a dull question.
You know, I'm frustrated. While he was talking, I thought of something very funny to say, and now I forgot it. It'll come to me.
All right, so sorry, I'm just laughing. All right, so another question I've got.
What do all these people do? Don't you have anything better to do? No. It's a beautiful day out there. Sorry about that.
All right, so what I'd like to know is, as you look back on your career and you think about your writing, if you couldn't have written novels or comics, what do you think you would have done?
I really secretly wanted to be an actor, you know? Yeah. When I was a little kid, I said I'd love to do cameos.
You've been, as a matter of fact, you've been proselytizing for that to be an Oscar category. For those of you who don't know, how many of you have seen on the web stands ardent cry for cameo artists to be recognized by the Academy?
I'm Funny or Die, if you've ever seen that. And if you haven't seen it, shame on you. When you're through here, go Google Funny or Die and get into it and see my video. And you'll say to yourself, oh, I wish I had known. I'd have thought of so many funny things to say to him, but it's too late.
So here's another question I have for you.
I gotta be nice to him because he's the head of Boom. And, you know, if I'm not nice to him, he's like my editor and publisher. No, you're my editor.
I'm the editor.
You're my publisher.
That's right.
And I'm just sitting here.
Get to work.
I'm always answerable to somebody.
We noticed that you're taking a day off, Stan. We think you should get back to work. So, all right. So here's a question. As a huge superhero fan, so as a creator, when you create your character,
Well, I like the sound of that, creator.
so what comes first to you? Do you think of the powers that the character has, or do you think of the personality first and then find the powers from that? What's your process like?
Think of how many bills I have to pay. You better come up with something pretty fast. No. I don't know. What do you think of? I think the name has to come first. I loved getting a good name. Like when I thought of the Hulk, I had no idea what it was going to be. If I had any brains, it would have been something better than what it turned out to be. But I was hoping you'd react that way. I was testing you, and congratulations, you all passed the test. So you can stay here a little longer. I won't send you out to that nice day out there just yet. What was the question?
Well, I figure it's a good segue into one of my favorite stories that you tell, which is the creation of Spider-Man.
Come back with me in All right, I'll tell you, I've told this so often, but, you know, for all I know, it might even be true. I had wanted to come up with a new character. Not that I really wanted to, but my job depended on it, so I had to. So I came up with the idea of Spider-Man. I wanted to get a character who was called Spider-Man and had the powers of a spider, and who would be a teenager because I hate teenage sidekicks. So I wanted the hero to be a teenager. You know, with teenage sidekicks, I always thought to myself, if I were a superhero, a grown man, would I pal around with some teenage kid? At the very least, people would talk. So I wanted him to be a teenager. Why aren't you laughing? I have to work with this guy. If I'm saying the wrong thing and put him in a bad mood, did I say something wrong?
The reason I'm not laughing is because now I have to fire my teenage sidekick.
All right, no, just let's be serious. And also, I said I want Spider-Man to have a lot of personal problems, because Superman never had a personal problem. And as far as I knew, Batman didn't, or none of them did. So anyway, I proposed Spider-Man to my publisher, a guy named Martin. That was his first name. That's how close I was with him, just Martin to me. And Martin said to me, Stan, that is the worst idea I have ever heard in my life. And he gave me 3 reasons. He said, first of all, you can't call a hero Spider-Man because people hate spiders. All right, that was his thought. Then he said, and it can't be a teenager. A teenager can only be a sidekick. You don't have a teenage hero. And then he said, and you want him to have personal problems? Stan, don't you know what a superhero is? They don't have personal problems. So I had to bow before his wisdom and the fact that he was paying my salary. But a few months later, we had this book, Amazing Fantasy. And we were going to kill it, even though I thought it was one of the best books, because I wrote all the stories. And Steve did go through them, and it really was a great book. Thank you. But the world wasn't ready for it at that time. They ought to republish them now. At any rate, we were going to drop the book. Now, when you're going to drop a book, nobody cares what you put in the last issue, because the book is dying anyway. So I threw Spider-Man in it just to get it out of my system, and I featured Spider-Man on the cover. And man, the sales figures came in, and it was the best-selling book we had for that period of time. So Martin came to me a little bit later. He said, Stan, do you remember that Spider-Man character of yours that we both liked so much? I remember. He said, let's do a series. And lo, a legend was born. You know, it's really a shame, because when we started out here, when we were backstage, Rich said to me, Stan, please, one-word answers. Don't go into these long speeches. And I keep forgetting. I'm sorry.
Well, don't let it happen again.